Well, Will, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really know how to come back from that. But let me just ask you this.
We're
When
good.
did you first come across Dale Earnhardt?
Humpy Wheeler was instrumental in that as well. And the initial concept was that he called and wanted to know if I'd be willing to be the car owner and the crew chief for the first African American stock car driver in NASCAR. And to myself, I'm thinking, can I earn money? And so I said, yes, I would. And he said, well, he was going to help me get a car from Bud Moore. And we were going to have some tests at Charlotte 3 or 4 days later. And we go to test, and Willie T. Ribbs is not going very fast. And I didn't set up the car, but Bud Moore did. And boy, did Bud Moore do us right. We got the right gear, the right motor, the right heads. He did us good. That car was fast. But right then, I didn't have enough time to do everything. But I'd been involved maybe a dozen or so years by then, so I was pretty sure we didn't. I checked what Bud did. He told me what he had, and he told me correctly. I saw no reason to change anything, but Willie just wasn't going fast. And Humpy was really getting kind of frustrated. And at one point, he took a napkin and drew the track and said, here's where the Union 76 ball is. Here's where the gate is. You need to be here. He drew him a map at how to get around Charlotte. And I think it's appropriate to think that Humpy knew how to go around Charlotte. And it wasn't happening. And Willie T was getting frustrated. And he pulled in on his last attempt for the day, and he pulled past us, pulled about three stalls down, pulls up right against the wall, steps out over the wall, and I haven't seen him since. And so Humpy calls me, and he says, I've sent your boy back to San Jose or to California. And, so I'm feeling, now what? And he said, don't worry. He says, I'll figure out something. He says, but you're going to hear your name on the news tonight. He said, just relax. And so I think it was Harold Johnson gets on the news, and he's talking about Willie T. Ribbs is no longer going to be involved in this car. Harold Johnson didn't get that out of his mouth, and the phone rings, and it's Dale. And Dale and I had done some work together. We weren't friends or anything, but associates. I'd helped him figure out some things about we were breaking springs when we were doing some welding, and I think we figured out what that was. So he had my phone number. He says, can I drive that car? And I said, well, it's not my car right now. This is kind of one of them deals. He said, do you care if I call Humpy? I said, no. A minute later, Harold Johnson's still talking about it on the TV. Humpy called him. He says, you care if he drives your car? I said, Humpy says, I said, you think he can keep it off the wall? I don't remember saying that, but we made the agreement. And so in the book I write about, we lived 55 miles apart. Dale was there in 45 minutes.
That night?
That night, right then. Right then. He just came down. He says, we got to fit that seat. I'll be right down. And I write about that in the book. The story is called My Introduction to Ironhead. And that's the story that Junior was referring to. And then I write about our race at Charlotte. Boy, I thought I was in big time. Humpy.
Well, let me ask you this first. When he came down and made the 55-mile trip in 45 minutes, you said that you spent 4 or 5 hours cutting the floor pan out and adjusting the seat. And he's not Dale Earnhardt yet. He's still up and coming. He doesn't have that cachet yet. He doesn't have that power yet.
Same line of thinking I had.
So why did you do it?
Well, I'd been around ladies long enough to know if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. And if a driver doesn't think you've given him everything, you ain't going to get everything. This is a chance. This is as much a chance for me as it was for Dale.
Really?
So I had as good a car as I'd ever had anything to do with. And he was not a foreign entity to me. I'd seen him run on the short tracks, and I'd also seen what he did to a couple cars in Atlanta that made me somewhat
Yeah.
hesitant, but
Yeah.
I was in, okay, and there's no sense being halfway in. So I said, listen, I told him, I'll do what you want. And I thought we were going to cut some holes in the existing seat brackets and move it forward because Buddy Baker was the last driver. We ended up moving it back, and we moved it down, and he'd get in, and he'd say, no, I'd like it a little bit longer, and I just did what he wanted. We both were crawling in. He was helping me. He wasn't just telling me to do it. He was helping me. And when we were done, we ended up cutting the floor pan and moving that whole frame thing down about 1.25 inches. And, you know, I've got the same look on my face now that you're seeing. And he said, you don't understand this. And I told him the same thing. I said, no, I told you I'd do what you wanted. I'm happy to do that. Don't have to understand all of it. I just want to go fast. He says, well, get in the car. So I crawl in. That was when I could. Sit in the car. And we're in the shop, and the wall's about 6 or 8 feet in front of the car. And he says, when you turn into turn 1 at Charlotte and go over that little hump, he said, where's that car in front of you? I said, I just pointed to the wall in front of me. He says, it's right there. And he kind of shrugged his shoulder. He says, where's the car in front of him? And I just looked at him, and he says, no. When you go into the turn, the car's turned up. The car that's in front of him is up here in the upper corner of the A-post. He knew, and he wanted that. So I thought he wanted to get back so you could feel when the car got loose, and I think that was an advantage. And that's what I was thinking, and weight low, so I wasn't looking at it from a visual standpoint. I was looking at it from a dynamic standpoint. So I was happy to do it. I hated that I had to do it at 2 a.m.
Was there ever a point, though, where you said, look here, you punk kid?
No, I guess I don't know why, but no, I never had that.
Wow.
The things that he was asking, I thought I understood, and they were things that I would have done. I just maybe wasn't so enthused about doing it right there.
Yeah, okay.
But
Well, now,
I was very impressed with the fact, with the same thing. This is a brand new guy. He's telling me to cut up my brand new car, but he knew.
Yeah,
I mean, he
yeah.
knew.
yeah.
He knew, and he never scratched my car either.
Now, you talked about the Harold Johnson news report. Was that 6 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news?
6,
Okay, all right. So what time did he get there?
7:30 or 8 o'clock.
7:30, 8 o'clock, okay. Well,
It was really quick.
Yeah,
It was really
yeah.
quick.
the part of the story that we hadn't talked about, though, is that he had somebody with him, a little kid.
A little 4-year-old boy, yeah.
Who was it?
It was Junior, Dale Jr. I mean,
Wow. And he stayed there the whole time with his daddy, and you.
they came in an old pickup truck, nicely painted. He was parked outside the shop, within 15 feet of where we were, but Dale rolled the window down, went over to that side of the car, made sure he was situated, I guess, rolled the window about halfway down, and never spoke to him. He just says, we'll be right back, or something to that effect. And I'd watch. We'd both take a turn, take times to look out the window.
So he stayed in the truck.
The whole time with his head sticking out the top half of that window. And he must have had a cold because there's snot running down the window
Wow.
glass. And
Now,
never made a peep.
you went to that first race with Dale at Charlotte using a trailer that that you essentially stole.
Yes, that.
The statute of limitations is over. What happened?
And he was from a long way away. I was building a car, or I was reskinning a car. A guy named Leon Boomershine from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, had bought a car from Darrell Waltrip and brought it down, wanted me to put a new body on it. And when this deal came up so quick, I had a 1964 6-cylinder pickup was my shop transportation and my personal transportation. And I had a trailer, but it was one of those trailers made out of mobile home wheels and homemade trailer. And this deal came up, and I had to do something. It was like 2 days I had to do something. And I the trailer hitch and that was fine. The car, and I had quite a bit, I had some pit equipment, but I just didn't have a trailer that I thought this car could make it to Charlotte on. And I mean, I don't have enough money to buy a trailer, to tell you the truth, and I don't know where I can borrow a trailer. And then I'm talking on the phone, and I look out my window and I say, well, there's a really nice trailer out there in my lot. So I called Leon, and I said, can I borrow this thing? He says, oh, I'd rather you not. And I said, well, it's only about 30 miles away. I said, it's be impounded. He said, well, I'd rather you not. So I hung up the phone and,
Hooked it up to the truck?
well, I just said, well, I believe I can get up there and back before he can get here from Oklahoma. One of the proudest pictures I've got is in the book, and it shows me bringing Dale's car home on a trailer behind that truck with so much crap in the truck, the tongue is almost dragging the ground. There's a story about that. We won that race. Humpy said, when you get here, come to the office, I got some money for you. So I went up there and he gave me $3,500. That was a lot of money. I mean, I was tickled to death to have $3,500. He says, this is who you're going to put the name on the car, the Cardinal Tractor Company. So we're down there that afternoon, sign painters out there, we're working on the car, and this tall guy comes up to me. I apologize, I don't remember his name, but he's from the tractor company, and he said, hi, I'm Bill, somebody. He said, I'm sponsoring the car. He says, I got an envelope for you. So he gave me an envelope. He talked for a little bit, and he walked off, and I looked in that envelope, and it was $3,500. And it dawned on me, that's the money that Humpy fronted me. So I put that in my pocket. I said, I'll give that back to Humpy. Well, I don't remember what the deal was. I carried it with me for 2 more days. Then after the race, we're getting ready to leave, and I had gotten $4,200 or something, a bunch of money. So I'm thinking, man, I should have got in this business a long time ago. No. But as we're getting paid, getting that money from being in the race, Humpy comes by because he wants to talk to us about how we did. So I pulled this envelope with $3,500 in it out of my pocket, and I said, this is yours. I said, I meant to give it to you earlier. I just been busy. And he had that money in his hand, that envelope in his hand, and he looked at my truck and my trailer and all the crap I had in this old 64 pickup truck, and he gave me this money back. He says, here, maybe you need to go buy a truck. And so I did. We went to Huggins,
Wow.
and we bought a Huggins tire truck and a used Reed trailer, which was the hot stuff at the time.
You said in the book that you considered the Firecracker 400 that year to
Yeah.
really be the race that
Yeah.
put Dale on people's radars.
Yeah.
You finished 7th,
Yeah.
3 laps down to race winner David Pearson. What was it about the race in particular that you think made people sit up and take notice?
I don't remember us being 3 laps down, perhaps, but we were running. We just ran fast. We had good stops. We just were fast. He was passing cars, and we weren't giving up much in the pits. I'm a little surprised at what you said. I don't disagree with it, but towards the end of the race, we were running in the top with the top 5 in cars. I mean, we were that fast that late in the race. And I'm guessing here there might have been 20 laps or so to go when a caution came out, and we were running with those guys. And so I knew the top 3 were going to come in and get 4 tires because, there was enough time left that they'd have to have some track time. So when he came in, we just put on 2 tires and just enough gas to finish the race. And we went out and we were running, I think, 3rd. And we were ahead of the 3 cars that were running, the 3 fastest cars. But it took them about 4 laps to get by him, and they had to pass him. He didn't move over. He didn't cause them no problem. He ran with them guys. They had the better car, but it wasn't much better.
Yeah.
And he held them off, and we ran. We were just fast all day. He ran in the lead. He ran tight in the draft. It was as good a car as I've probably ever. Well, I've had a couple other times, but it was a good car, and he handled it well. He never put a scratch in my car either.
What was the game plan? Were you wanting to put something together for Dale yourself?
Yes.
Full time?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Or what was your reaction when he came to you and told you about Rod?
What can you say? I was proud that he ran good enough that somebody gave a crap to ask him, for one thing. So I was proud of that, and I knew who offered him the ride. I had no way of competing with Rod Osterlund. I mean, there was no decision. I'd have made the same decision he did. And I'll say this. We had an agreement to run 5 races. And he said, I need to not run one. They want to run me in one of their cars this year, and I don't want to lose my eligibility for rookie. So we made some arrangements. I can't think of the name tonight. One of the regulars that wasn't running up front had boy, I apologize, I can't remember his name. But Baxter Price. For some reason, he didn't have a car or something. So we made some arrangements that he started the car. Dale practiced it. He practiced it, but he qualified the car. And Dale said he'd drive for me, so he got in at the first yellow and finished the race. And
where was this?
I vote at Charlotte, the National 500.
Okay.
And I was impressed. He could have stayed out, but he said he'd drive 5 races, and he drove. He only got credit for 4, but he drove 5 races. He kept his word.
Now, did you have a written contract, or was this just a handshake deal?
No, we're both happier than hell. We were going to go to the next race.
You also worked with Mark Martin for a time in 1981. What was your impression of him that early in his career?
I was really impressed. I didn't work with him at the racetrack. Our entire deal was I built him his first 2 cars. He came to me, we built a Pontiac Ventura, probably, a Busch car, an Xfinity class car, and it went fast, but he crashed it at Rockingham. I think that something happened at Daytona, and he ran at Rockingham and sat on the pole, set a track record, and crashed. And then he hit one of his sponsors from Arkansas, wanted to put him in a cup car, and he came back and wanted to know if I would build him a cup car. And in writing the book, I spent a little bit of time talking with him, and I said, what made you pick me to build your car? And he said he'd heard some good things, but he didn't want a name brand fabricator spouting what he wanted to do to his car. I don't know if he wanted me to tell everything we did to that car, but he was an extremely creative. He knew what he wanted, and he knew why, and he told me he was a little surprised that I didn't balk at any of his ideas, and I told him I didn't balk at any of them because I agreed with all of them. I liked what Mark was doing, and I thought we got along really well. He went to such a degree for weight distribution that he hand ground things like the rear end housing and some other things, and he made things lighter. The car only had 2 gauges in it, a water temperature gauge and an oil pressure gauge. The pedals were on the ground. We made 2 battery boxes for adjustments. And when it was said and done, when that car went through inspection the first time, it had 606 pounds of lead in it.
Okay.
It was a creative car.
Yeah.
I was very impressed, still am.
Just how creative was it?
Very.
Okay.
It wasn't my car, you know. I'm
Okay, I understand. Speaking of creative, you qualified for the 1982 Daytona 500 with Elliott Forbes Robinson, and you had Jolly Rancher as a sponsor, and part of the marketing deal was each race you got 250 pounds of candy.
they would send us 5 50-pound boxes Jolly Rancher candy to give out.
And how many, you ran 2 or 3 races?
I think we went to 3 different races. Our race at Atlanta, we ran, I thought we qualified pretty well. In the last qualifying session, we made the race. In the last qualifying session, he cut a tire in turn 1 and hit the wall hard in turn 2. And so we couldn't make the race. We qualified, but we didn't race. And that's the car that was in the Burt Reynolds movie, the Stroke Race movie, and it's the one that Bill Ryan just restored. I call it my mountain car. He found it up in the mountains. But I was pretty impressed with Elliott. The more I've learned about Elliott Forbes Robinson, the more impressed I get.
Why is that?
He's talented. I have an affinity for sports cars, and I've seen some of the stuff that he's driven. I just like it. I've seen how he adapts to cars, different kinds of cars. And the stock car was not his ride of choice, I didn't think at that period of time, but he understood enough that he had good community skills to tell me what to do to the car, and so I thought he could read what a car was doing. And I've got a videotape on TV about him running with Bobby Allison at Talladega. That was another creative car that we made in 1982. But the Daytona race, if you look at the picture in the book, the car right behind us is Bill Elliott. We ran good in that race. We had a problem with somebody lost a bumper or something. I don't remember what it was. But we ran well, and that was the very first car that I built literally from scratch, just right from nothing.
That was Bobby Allison that lost the bumper. And
Yeah.
went on
Oh,
to win the
yes.
race. Yeah.
That's a Talladega race.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
my
Okay, all right.
I apologize.
I
My
was talking
memory
about
on that
Daytona
stuff's
5.
not.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, in Daytona, that's correct. It was Bobby's lost a bumper.
You go to Talladega that same year with a car that was 3.5 inches more narrow than anybody else.
Who told
there.
you that?
Do what?
Who told you that?
Yeah, you did.
Oh,
How did you get that thing through inspection?
I wasn't a top tier competitor. I think they
Okay.
weren't giving a crap. I just got by 'em. It's funny. Junior Johnson built the motor in that car. And in '82, this was never spoken between us. I asked him if he would rebuild my motor, and he called me back a couple of days later and said that he would. He said he'd treat me real well, price-wise, if I just would shut the heck up. Don't bring it up. And he said, don't you touch nothing.
Really?
You put it in the car, you don't touch nothing. So I'm happy. I'm getting extremely good work at extremely fair price, and we're going fast. It was in the car at Daytona.
So he's basically using you for basically R&D.
What I think happened was that he'd run something on a dyno and it looked good,
Yeah.
and if we didn't puke it, he'd put it in his car. And I wasn't mad.
Yeah.
It worked out really good for me, and there was never a discussion as to how that was going. But Junior was really good to me in a lot of ways. And then that skinny car at Talladega, when Benny ran 200 and a little bit, we went out and practiced. Remember leaning both front wheels back and put new tires on it. Something to the timing. And we went out, and Elliott went 203. We went more than 3 miles an hour faster than Benny did that same day. It's unofficial. But I talked to Steve Wade, who was his friend at the newspaper.
Higgins.
Higgins,
Higgins,
yeah,
yeah.
Tom Higgins. I talked to Tom, and he remembered it as well. I don't have any written. I threw
Yeah,
my sheets
yeah.
away about 6 years ago, but he remembered that, so I was okay about putting it in the book. But it drew a lot of attention. But when they went away, the attention went away. Junior came down, and we're sitting. There's so many people standing around. We were back on the workbenches there at Talladega, and he looked up at me and said, "Can I raise the hood?" And so I said, "Yeah." And he, because we outran him pretty bad, and he raised the hood and he walks around. And he looks at that thing, and he looks up at me, and he goes around the other side of the car and looks at the motor, and he looks up at me, and he just shrugged his shoulders. He's, because he knew darn good and well I didn't do something to make his motor go
Yeah,
faster.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he knew better than that, but I don't know what he was looking at. So he puts the hood down, he puts the right side in and the two middle and then this left side, and he puts his hands back in his bib overalls and he turns around and he's walking back up the garage area. And just as he gets to the side of the car, he looks up the side of the car and then he looks at me, gave me the thumbs up and just walked up there. 'Cause he could see there were no flares on the car,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
as flat as it
Yeah,
could be. And
yeah.
he didn't say nothing, but they didn't catch me. And I think he ran one race with a skinny car before they called him.
Now, Will, I'm going to be honest with you. I was excited to come down here and talk to you about Dygard and Donnie Allison and Dale Earnhardt and Mark Martin. But this may be the most important question I asked. This is the one that I was most excited about asking. Tell me about working on the movie Stroker Ace.
That was the most.
The greatest stock car racing movie of all time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you and me know that.
Yeah.
I'd gotten involved a little bit with the Kenny Rogers movie Six Pack. We'd
Okay.
used a car that we crashed at Atlanta, fixed it enough just to go around the racetrack, and we put some transmission fluid in a squirt bottle. And it was going to be a car where it looked like the motor blew, smoke everywhere, and it ran into the wall. And we did that, but they cut it out of the film. But I had been involved enough that the Universal Studio people called and said they're going to make this movie a Burt Reynolds movie. Would I be interested in being involved? And I had a good time. And am I going to get paid? Yeah, we're going to get paid. So I said I'll do it. And they ended up. I said, well, how are we going to get paid? And they said, well, it's a little different than normal. We're going to give you a contract that guarantees 30 seconds exposure in this Burt Reynolds movie, and then you can sell this contract. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. How am I going to make money with that? And I said, well, have you got anybody already? And they had, wherever they got the money for that 4-star whiskey car. I don't know if there's a 4-star whiskey or not.
Yeah.
I don't drink, so I don't know. But the 7-Eleven people had put up some money, so we had 2 to start with, and they'd just made copies of this contract so I could have it to one of them.
Yeah.
And I did go out. I talked to some of the folks that I'd built cars for, so I provided probably 8 or 9 of the cars that were in that movie, and all the pit equipment and a couple trucks, and that's how I got my tractor trailer rig. I thought I'll call around here and somebody will give me a trailer for that movie. Well, nobody'd give me one. But the Fruoff people, I think in Texas, called me 3 weeks before the race and said, we're not going to give you nothing, but we got this IndyCar trailer that somebody paid. They paid a third and let it go. If you'll pay another third, you can have it. So I got a nice 45-foot tractor trailer, a foot taller, lowered, big wheels, aluminum wheels, and polished stainless steel rear doors, 3 side doors, a jam-up trailer. So I sold one side of it for $10,000 and sold the other side for $10,000, and they switched both of them, and that paid for the trailer. And the issue was, the first story I write about in that movie, or in that book, is the guy at the Ford Motor Company somehow, some gentleman in charge of the promotional work, didn't know that 2 of the prototype cars had been delivered to my shop. They only had made 5 prototype cars. And he was mad. I don't know who gave the permission to the Universal people. I didn't make the connection. The movie people did. This guy calls me. The first guy called. He says, we're coming down there. When we get there, you need to have a fire out in your yard with 4-foot tall flames in it. I didn't know. I think he was going to cook hot dogs. So they pull in this big Ford truck. Cars had gunny sacks over them like you see in one of them car rental advertisements. And they bring them out. These guys they were armed. They had pistols. And I'm thinking, what the heck? So they unload these cars, and they said, get that fire going. And they stood there, and they made me take all the upholstery out of those 2 cars and put them in that fire. I burn up every flammable thing on the inside of them 2 cars. I didn't care.
Wow.
And they left.
Okay.
Well, the next morning, I get the nastiest phone call I've ever had in my life. so-and-so from the Ford Motor Company, don't you touch them cars. I said, sir, you're a little late. You want me to send you ashes? I said, you got a pile of burnt crap out in the front yard. He said, oh, he was eating me up. He said, don't you do nothing else. I get a call that afternoon. This guy calls, he says, I'm going to be at the airport 9 o'clock in the morning. You bring a truck, pick me up. I go down there, and this guy in a suit. We go over to the freight company, pick up 2 big boxes, put them in that's nice looking 64 pickup that I've got. Take him to the shop, and he says, you clear everybody out of here. And I did. He unbuttons his tie, puts on a work jacket, raises the hoods are off the cars. He goes in there and he changes the intake and carburetor system. They had some sequential fuel injection they didn't want anybody to know, and they put carburetor stuff back on them. So we take him back, and every day I'm getting this call from this guy just eating my lunch because I've got his cars.
And these were cars that were going to be used in the movie.
They were their cars were going to be used in the movie, but they weren't at the dealership yet. This was before they even showed up at the, before they had any cars built at the dealers. And so they didn't want people looking at them and seeing them. So we finally get him there to the racetrack, and we go to we get to the racetrack, and this guy's looking for me, and I elude him for a little bit, and finally he comes up and he addresses me in person about my lack of intellectual qualities, I guess. And as we're talking, one of the stunt guys spins this car out, one of the Thunderbirds out, and tears up the left front suspension on this car. This guy, tow truck, brings it in. He looks at that. He looks at me. And it's a new car, new chassis. There's no new suspension. I can't go to the hardware store and buy stuff. Not a lot of it's torn up. Most of it's bent and that. And then Bert and Hal come up and they said, we're going to go to lunch. And that guy looks at me with all them people around there. He says, I want that car done. When we come back from lunch, he says, I don't care how you do it. That car better be fixed. Well, when they left, Bert just turns around and shrugs his shoulders like, good luck. And as they leave, I see that guy had driven another one of those prototype cars down to Talladega. Whoa. I believe I know I'm going to fix that car. Oh, he was going to lunch. I went out in the parking lot and jacked up his ride, took all the crap out from underneath it and put it underneath the race car. And so he's happy when he comes back, right?
Yeah.
And he comes up and he said, you SOB. And Bert said, you told him you didn't care how he fixed it. So that was my payback to that old fart.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Will, at what point did you kind of make the decision to kind of step away from NASCAR?
I was married at the time. I had 2 little girls and had kind of started a business. And my job had always been, as a crew chief or a car owner, to decide at breakfast that morning what we were going to do to the car. They usually had 2 classes of races, 2 classes of cars at the track. So when you weren't practicing, it wasn't quiet. There was other noise. So I'd made a plan to, just a little check sheet of things we would do. If this happened, we'd do that. If this happened, we'd do that. Just a little premeditated approach to things if things went well. And I woke up this one morning and I didn't wear clothes when I went to bed. So I got up and I put a towel around my waist, went out in the parking lot and found a telephone booth to find a telephone book to find out what town I was in, so I knew what I was going to talk about at breakfast that morning. Figured that was about enough. And 90 days later, I was designing stuff for the machine company.
Well, when I first got here, you took me up to your shop, and that is the shop of a mad scientist. you love to tinker. It's obvious that you love to tinker. And it's almost like walking back in time with all the stuff that you got up there. What is it that you love about that building and going up there and being able to create the way that you do?
Well, everything that's in that building, with my wife's understanding and commitment and help and assistance, it's me.
Yeah.
Everything on that shelf, I put there, and this stuff's over there because I want it over there. And I like just being able to go up and I'd like to draw things in SolidWorks. And I live with SolidWorks and the water jet machine. I draw stuff on the computer, get it cut on the water jet, and then weld it together. And that Speedster that I built was all done on the computer and a water jet, and then the metal shaping with the metal shaping equipment. But the single thing I like more than anything is wherever I go, when I come home, first thing I'll do is I'll go up to that shop, turn on a light, sit in a chair, and just look at it and smell it. It's just
Yeah.
that's how I was, I guess. I don't know. I do like being up there. My wife's been very good about putting up with and helping me get whatever I think I'd like to have up there. So she's been very kind in that regard. So it's a peaceful place. I don't have to go there to get away from stuff. We haven't got much, but we don't owe nothing, and we're in a good spot.
Can't ask for much more than that. You have mentioned your book, NASCAR Redneck, several times. What made you decide to put that project together?
When I got out of racing, I wanted to build that Speedster that you saw up there. I did a lot of work in NASCAR, all steel bodies, a lot of rules.
Yeah.
I restored those 2 Model A's for fine point judging, all steel bodies and a lot of rules. And I just wanted to make something where if I wanted the bracket to be over there, I could put it over there. If I want the wheel to be there, I can put the wheel there. And I didn't want it to be steel, so I designed this car to have an aluminum body. Well, I wasn't very skilled at that aluminum body part, so I got to attending some of these metal meets where just metal shaping aficionados get together around the country and hang out and share their ideas, and I learned an awful lot. I've had the good fortune of hanging around some very, very talented metal shapers. And these are generally 2 to 4 day events, so they gather in the evenings, and I've gotten in the habit of telling stories. And they like the stories, and so every time I'd tell a story, they'd say, well, you need to write a book. Well, I didn't think I could write a book, but I started writing stories, I don't know why. I just started writing them. And so over a couple of years, I just started putting some together. And then when the COVID-19 thing came along, I just hit it. I just hit it hard. I put together the other ones. I maybe had a dozen stories, and I think the book's got 68 stories in it. And I could write more. I'm a little surprised at how much crap I've done.